Hi class, welcome to World History Part 1. Today's lecture is going to cover prehistory to the Neolithic era. Please let me know if you have any questions after listening to any of my lectures. So what is history? I think today it means different things to different people, don't you? I'm going to describe history in the words of a famous scholar, Dr. Jared Diamond. He wrote Guns, Germs, and Steel. He says history is like an onion. He says it consists of layers. And what a good history class should do is peel back layers. But like onions, not everyone likes history, right? So who else can you think of that is like an onion?
I don't get it, Shrek. Why don't you just pull some of that ogre stuff on him? You know, throttle him, lay siege to his fortress, grind his bones to make your bread. You know the whole ogre trip.
Oh, I know what. Maybe I could have decapitated an entire village and put their heads on a pike, got a knife, cut open their spleen and drink their fluids. Does that sound good to you?
No, not really, no.
For your information, there's a lot more to ogres than people think.
Example?
Example? Okay, ogres are like onions.
They stink?
Yes. No.
Oh, they make you cry?
No.
Oh, you leave them out in the sun, they get all brown, start sprouting little white hairs.
No. Layers. Onions have layers. Ogres have layers. Onions have layers. You get it. We both have layers.
Oh, you both have layers. Oh. You know, not everybody likes onions. Cake! Everybody loves cakes. Cakes have layers.
I don't care what everyone likes.
So class, like onions and ogres, history has layers. Some can make you cry, some layers smell bad, and not everyone is going to like the story. Still, for this class, World History Part 1, I hope students can come away with a better understanding of how they connect to the past and how we got here. I want to give you a little background on understanding history. In this class, we're going to use BCE when describing before the Common Era, instead of BC, which stands for before Christ. And we're going to use CE, which describes the Common Era, instead of AD. So do you know what AD stands for? No, not after death, but it stands for Anno Domini, which is Latin for in the year of our Lord. So how and why do we write about history? Historians are going to use primary sources, which are sources created during that time that we're studying, and secondary sources, which are scholars' interpretation of primary sources. And we're also going to use something very important, especially during the study of World History 1. We're going to use the study of stones and bones, or the work of archaeologists who study human history and prehistory by excavating sites and analyzing what they find. Prehistory class is considered typically to be a time before written records. Historians love archaeologists because they do all the dirty work. Today, we have more and more technology to help us understand stones and bones, like DNA and things like radiocarbon dating. And one important archaeologist is Dr. Sarah Parcak, right here at UAB, who has used satellite imaging to identify potential archaeological sites in Egypt, Rome, and elsewhere in the former Roman Empire. So let's take a minute and look at the study of archaeology in her eyes.
We are the detectives of the past, and we have to figure out what happened. That is what is fascinating about archaeology. Peru is super special archaeologically because this is one of the cradles of civilization. It's where civilization actually arose from nothing.
A little over 100 years ago, here in Bingham, went to Peru and, relying on local knowledge, found this crumbling city in the middle of the rainforest. At the time, he used state-of-the-art photography equipment to record what was there. It was the first scientific archaeological expedition that National Geographic funded. And in some ways, it helped to launch our modern age of archaeology. So the idea of applying new state-of-the-art technology to map sites in Peru feels like a natural extension of what Hiram Bingham did over 100 years ago.
One of the dreams of archaeology has always been to look from above. As drones became available 5 or 6 years ago, archaeologists jumped at this opportunity. Finally, we can fly above our excavations and take a picture that reveals everything that we have been seeing from below. Now, if you simply go up, into the space and look down with a camera, you can at the same time look at not 1 square mile, but many square miles. And then you can focus on specific items that you think are important.
Space archaeology is the study and the use of satellite images for mapping ancient archaeological features and environmental features by looking at different parts of the light spectrum. We see subtle changes on the Earth's surface caused by what's buried beneath. And what satellites help us to do is pinpoint areas, and we know to within a few meters exactly where something is from thousands of miles away. We're the generation with all the tools and all the technologies to be able to map sites and protect them. And using these new technologies, we have a real chance to protect and preserve these sites for future generations.
So class, why do we study history? It's going to help us have a better understanding of why people are different, why we live the way we do, and who does it make us? We need to connect the dots between us today and the past. I really believe today more than ever. And as John Adams said, historians must not have a country. So what do you think about that, class? What does that mean to you? Why don't you let me know what you think it means? This class is going to cover World History to 1600 approximately. And it means the good thing is we're going to cover a large tract of time. That's also the bad thing. We can't cover it all. But I want to spend a few minutes on prehistory and set up the story and put it all in perspective. So, for example, the universe is approximately 15 billion years old. The Earth is 4.5 billion years old. And depending on your sources, our closest genetic ancestors arrived about 7 to 9 million years ago by exhibiting bipedalism, or walking upright. Closer relatives emerged around 200,000 years ago. And Homo sapiens sapiens, or modern man, will emerge about 35,000 years ago. That number is not static, it's constantly moving because of this radiocarbon dating, the DNA, and new archaeological evidence that we're finding. I'm not here to debate evolution with you, class. I'm only going to present to you physical, scientific evidence, and scientists suggest that human beings, or modern man, are part of a long evolutionary chain. African apes broke into 3 groups: gorillas, chimpanzee, and hominids. And over a period of several million years, a combination of traits will set Homo sapiens, or modern man, apart from other hominids and apes. There was an overlap between the time hominids lived and Homo sapiens lived, along with some cohabitation. And we are also similar genetically in other ways, because according to the National Geographic article that I've got pulled into class for you, chimps and humans are 96% of the same genetic makeup. Yet Homo sapiens have proved to be far superior in many ways, including language abilities, consciousness of their environment, and we'll talk about a few of those in a minute. So we're similar to hominids, class, but we set ourselves apart and began populating the world while other species of hominids die out. Nevertheless, in our direction, modern man ancestors started out in Africa. Therefore, a common view among scholars is that we are all Africans. So let's take a minute, go over the earliest human, or hominids, to help us understand how important evolution is to all of this, which really breaks down to the ability of a species to adapt to survive. Adaptations allow them to alter their behavior and become innovative to solve problems. A few of the more important discoveries to begin with is Australopithecus. The first one found, they named her Lucy after an Elton John song. She was discovered in South Africa, and she had a small brain, but she definitely was the first to walk upright. She was only about 3 foot tall, and she is considered to be about 3.4 million years old. And moving on, Homo habilis is next, discovered by a famous husband and wife team of the Leakeys. Deer Boy, as they named him, was found in Tanzania, and his brain was bigger. He was also bipedal and considered more skillful. He had early tools, opposable thumbs, and that kind of thing. And Homo erectus had an even larger brain and could better control the environment, like the use of fire. And with fire, you can have a better diet. And he spread out over Africa about 1.2 million years ago, and then later spread across the globe using things like the frozen Bering Strait to North America. Class, according to scholars, these are humans, but not humans not a modern day human. A couple of examples of the Homo habilis is going to be, of the Homo erectus is going to be Java man and Peking man. So hominids show evidence of setting themselves apart from apes by the ability to adapt and find new ways of doing things, kind of like college students like you. And finally, Homo sapiens began to thrive following large game, living as hunters and gatherers, developing things like language, music, art, and leading another wave of exodus out of Africa. They lived simultaneous for a while with Neanderthals and Cro-Magnon man, who are subspecies, but there's overlap and cohabitation, but eventually Homo sapiens is going to become the dominant modern man. You can read a lot more about it in the textbook. And if you ever do your own DNA testing with a company like Ancestry.com or 23andMe, you can find your Neanderthal markers. And class, I don't know if I'm proud to say this or not, but I'm 2% Neanderthal, which is about 35% more than most people in America. So, human evolution is not one fluid motion. It's a series of ups and downs, starts and stops with gaps that's going to be shaped by many factors. I want to show you a few photographs that I think you'll find interesting. First of all, this is Louis Leakey of the famous Leakey team of archaeologists who worked in East Africa and established that area as one of the starting points for human development. This is Olduvai Gorge in Tanzania. It's arguably the most famous archaeological site containing hominid finds. The Leakeys worked here and others, and they were convinced that early humans originated in Africa. Again, they had skillful man or deer boy, and they argued that these findings represent a direct link back to Homo erectus, Homo habilis, back to Australopithecus. This is a cave in Beijing, China, and it's one of the largest and most important early Stone Age sites in China of archaeological evidence. And they have found evidence here of fire use. Class, humans seemed to start wearing clothes long after they had lost body hair. It was not until they had clothing of sorts that modern humans are going to move out of Africa. And I'm going to take a quick pause and we're going to pick back up with the Paleolithic era.